Hello, my name is Dene Wallace, and I go by Dene. I was born in a little border town in Arizona called Nogales. And July 15th, which is not too far away from today's date. And my parents were William Hamilton Bennett Sr. from Jacksonville, Texas, and my mother was Mildred Eveline Simpson Bennett from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it was a very interesting story how they ended up in Nogales. My grandfather's mother was living in Nogales and his sister was living in Nogales. And he decided to take a family vacation trip from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to visit his mother. And at that time, he had 4 children. My mother's oldest sister, Dorothy, then my mother, Mildred, twins, Stephen Simpson and Drusilla Simpson, and possibly even Edward Simpson at the time that they went to Nogales. Well, once they got to Nogales, the Depression hit, and he had contact from Pittsburgh, and they told him, if you can find a job in Nogales, don't come back because it's really tough back here in Pittsburgh. There are soup lines and their jobs are hard to come by. So my grandfather set up homing there, and the property where his home originally was, now the statue of Father Kino sits right there on that spot. But anyway, my mother and her brothers and sisters grew up in Nogales. And my mother eventually went away to school at Arizona State Teaching College in Tempe, Arizona. And she was the first in her family to go to college. And I believe there were only 2, she and her youngest brother, who actually finished and had a college education. But my mother came back to Nogales to teach. And when she came back, there was this gentleman, William Hamilton Bennett Sr., who was in the military, and he was stationed on the Border Patrol. And that's how my mother and father met. And the rest is history about. They got married, had an older sister, Linda, Iavon Bennett, Craig Sardana, and she grew up in Nogales. She was born in Nogales. My brother happened to be born in New York. He's the middle person, William Hamilton Bennett Jr. And then, of course, I was born in Nogales. My mother was a teacher down there. She was one of 3 at Frank Reed Elementary School, which was a segregated school designed only for those students who were from, had mixed heritage, any mixed heritage. The predominant mixed heritage was African-American men and Hispanic women. The African-American men happened to be Buffalo Soldiers stationed in Fort Huachuca, but then they were also stationed at Camp Little. The children of those Buffalo Soldiers and their wives were the students who went to Frank Reed School. So my mother was one of the teachers there. What happened was my mother and others saw inequities in having segregated schools down there and felt that there was no need to do that. So my mother was very instrumental in working through the processes to integrate the schools. They did integrate the schools, and my mother was the first African-American teacher hired at Elm Street School in Nogales, and she taught 4th grade there. The interesting thing was my mother also taught her siblings because she had other siblings after that. There was David Simpson, Theodore Simpson, Dolores Simpson Owens, and her youngest brother, Richard Simpson. And she taught them. In addition, she taught her own 2 older children. She taught my sister and my brother in school. But I did not. And I went to Little Bunny School in Nogales, and I went to Lincoln Elementary School, where also my brother and sister went as they were older. So our roots are in Nogales with my mother and my father. My grandparents lived there, had aunts and uncles who lived in Nogales. And the memories of everything that my mother did to help integrate the school system down there. She eventually, our family moved because my father got a job up in Phoenix area. We moved to Phoenix, and my mother started her teaching career, continued her teaching career in the Phoenix area. She taught at Bethune Elementary School, and then she became the first African-American curriculum coordinator for Phoenix Elementary School District number 1. And she was curriculum coordinator for grades 4 through 6. She went on to teach at, I can't remember the name of that one elementary school, but then she became the principal of Capitol Elementary School in Phoenix before she retired in 1983, I believe it is, when my mother retired. She had been teaching for, I believe it was 36 years. She was in education before she retired. My schooling, as I mentioned, started out in a little nursery school called Bunny School in Nogales. And then I went to Lincoln School for first grade. By the time my parents moved to Phoenix, I was in second grade. And I went to Percy L. Julian Elementary School, which was predominantly African-American school. It was African-American school. I can't say predominantly because I don't remember others being at that school at the time that I was going there. It slowly integrated because it really wasn't a segregated school. It's just that the neighborhood was. I also went to South Mountain High School, and I was always impressed with my mother. She would take me to take a child to school day, and I would go to school with her while in the classroom, you know, with the other students. And I felt like I was a teacher too, and it had such an impact on me that I too went to Arizona State University, where I got my bachelor's degree in English, minor in reading, and I became a high school English teacher. And throughout the years, I eventually became an administrator in the Tempe Union High School District, in charge of many programs, Title I, ESL, 504, and the testing and assessment. I also became an adjunct staff with Northern Arizona University in the College of Ed Leadership. So my mother was my rock. She was a great influence on me. She has so many students that remembered her throughout her life, the impact that she had on their life, the impact that she had in the community. And, you know, one of the interesting things that I would say is on the street that I grew up on in Phoenix, my second grade teacher lived across the street from us. My seventh grade teacher and eighth grade teachers also lived on the same block. So it was truly an educational village that I grew up in. And it was one of the things that you never stepped out of line because, you know, they were not only your neighbors and friends of your parents, they were your teachers and educators, they were your mentors. You know, we don't have villages like that anymore. But that was the environment in which I grew up. So education was extremely important in my family. My sister, brother, both had master's degrees. My sister was also in education. My brother was in business. So we had an educated family, and my children have gone to college. My brother's children gone to college. My sister's children did military. So we are an education family. We also very close-knit family, enjoyed golfing together. You know, I was a junior golfer. My two daughters went to college on golf scholarships. And that was part of my mother and father too. They were part of the Desert Mashie Golf Association in Phoenix, the only African-American golf club. And my husband and I at one point became the co-directors of the junior golf program for Desert Mashie. So those are some of the things we did as home, and we just kept the family close-knit, just like my parents did. Some of the traditions that we had in our family is we were always going to golf tournaments. I mean, that was something that we looked forward to because we would go out and we would play golf during the days and weekends, go to tournaments out of town, especially to California, is where we would go to golf tournaments. Family traditions, our family was very close with aunts and uncles and cousins. And for all of the holidays, we always got together because we always wanted to make sure that everyone understood the importance of family. And we have done that, our families grew up like brothers and sisters with the cousins because of that closeness. Of course, we have our traditions of New Year's chitlins and greens and black-eyed peas and all of the traditions that come from people from Texas and back east. My parents carried those forward, and I still continue those today. I belong to multiple clubs. My mother was a member of the Phoenix chapter of the Lynx, and of course, she brought my sister and I into the Lynx organization. I have celebrated 50 years in Lynx, and I have the honor of being a platinum member of the organization, one of the highest positions that you can be in, to be in an organization where you've put in your time and your service, the community service that's connected with it. I follow the footsteps of my mother into the sorority of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. She was a president of the Beta Theta chapter, and she and my sister were charter members of Phoenix Metropolitan Alumni chapter. I and my two daughters have become charter members of the Arizona West Valley Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. So we stay very busy, we stay involved in the community. And I have to say, my mother, best mother ever in the world. She was my rock. She was, a best friend. When you lose your mother and you remember how much, you think back on how much your mother influenced your life. She was a big influence in my life. She inspired me to do the things that I do. Every time I do something new, I think about, okay, Mom did this, and now I'm walking in her footsteps, and I hope I can do the same justice and have the same impact with the community and with people that my mother did. My lifelong work is to make sure that I leave some kind of impact, positive impact in the community. I want to go back to, some of the other little food things that we talked about. My favorite dish, of course, is during the holidays. I don't like to do a lot of cooking. I did all the cooking when I was raising my children, my 3 children. I'm married to Robert Charles Wallace Sr. My husband was a professional football player. My son, Robert Wallace II, is a retired professional boxer. And my 2 daughters, in education. My oldest daughter is an entrepreneur, and she's also a scientist. And we have these traditions of foods that we eat during the holidays. That's very specific to us. And of course, we have the traditional things that you do for Thanksgiving. Love that because that's different. We don't cook that kind of food all throughout the year. The traditional things of the ham and the turkey and things like that that you eat for Christmas too, cranberries. And I remember my aunt used to make this fudge. She had the recipe for C's candy fudge, and she would make that, and we lost that recipe, heaven help us. But it was wonderful because that was a tradition that we had, and that tradition is lost. My grandmother and my aunt used to fix gumbo for New Year's. And I mean, that gumbo had everything in it. And the taste was a taste that, I haven't been able to replicate anywhere. And of course, that recipe too was lost, but that was one of my favorites. But what my family does on New Year's, that is when we have our chitlins, our greens, our black-eyed peas, our yams, the rolls. We have it all on that one day, the dish of every taste that we remember. And I had a tradition because, cleaning and cooking chitlins is not an easy task. And when you have everyone in your family, children included, who enjoy those chitlins, I had to figure out how to get some help. So I set up a movie camera one time in the kitchen, right at the sink. And we had all these red and white buckets of chitlins. And I said, okay, if I don't see your face and your hands in the sink cleaning chitlins, then when we sit down to the dinner table, you'll have to eat the ham and everything else, but you won't be able to eat the chitlins. So guess what? Everyone was on screen, holding up the chitlins, grinning, because they wanted to make sure they were seen on screen with the chitlins. And so they could enjoy eating chitlins And that is a transition, a tradition that everyone in the family remembers. One of the other traditions we had is families always took certain holidays, to celebrate, and we would talk about the things that we have done. And so we would be updating our family on everything that's going on. It's sort of like the family history, sort of like, how we keep track of family. And so I picked up and kept the tradition going of Christmas Eve. At one time, I would have a slumber party for my brother and sister's children, and then they started having children, and then it became so big, and it was like, oh, I don't know, a slumber party works for that many people. But I would have the family Christmas Eve, and it's a tradition that even the younger kids now really, really remember, and they look forward to it. COVID changed a lot of things. It's changed the way we do traditions with extended family, but it has not changed the traditions that I continue to do with my immediate family, because I want my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren to experience and know the love and comfort that you have with each other, the comfort and the bring together that food does, like, the movie Soul Food. The way they bring family together was the way we brought our family together. So one of the things that I think, as we think about what happens with upcoming generations, you have to remember what's really important in life. You have to understand that knowledge is golden. Knowledge is what will unlock your world. So education will always be extremely important, and you never stop. In education, you never stop learning, no matter what your age is, no matter what you go. And you pass that on to future generations so that you maintain a high level of educated family members, your involvement in your community. All of these things go to make a well-rounded person and a well-rounded family. And if you could just create that village where people always know who they can look back on and who they can get advice from, those are very important for upcoming generations. And I thank my mother and my father, because he too had a college degree, he was a musician. And I thank them for the closeness that they brought our family together, that there was not the bickering, there was the understanding, there were the conversations. Those are the things that some families are missing out on. And oh, what a world we would have if people understood what it meant to be a close-knit family, to love each other, to mentor each other, to learn from each other, and to always be the primary educators and keep a village going in every family.